So our discussions over 2 years have needed a degree of humility, of wrestling with words. We've spent weeks on trying to understand in each other's language the difference between sovereign and sovereignty. What does data mean? How does knowledge transfer occur? What is the quantum within that perspective? How is society changing, and how is society able to learn in a way that is good for humanity? We talk about putting humanity back in the loop. So our passion is avoiding conflict. And one of the reasons that we wish to avoid conflict is because some of our more complex models, our dynamic social network models, forecast some very uncertain futures, which could be more conflicting than they are today.
What was also important there was to try to look at the connectivity between technologies. I mean, data center people are technology people. They do not have to be, socially oriented. That is not their responsibility. However, we look at it in the future, we look at it in that quantum space, where eventually, at some point in time, both the technological, what we call the techno, and everything to do with the social ethics, which is so important, what we call the socio, will become indivisible. So what we tried to do today was to bring awareness to those people who are looking at data management, data center, data security as a technological issue, to try to understand that without the social, without the ethics, this has no future. And it seems like maybe we succeeded, I don't know, but in a future, in any case, that is the way it's going to be.
Yes, and I think probably my takeaway was we think of the data centers now as an info-technological hub. But the extension of what Jonathan is saying is that we cannot divide the info from the technological, or the socio from the info-technological, unless, of course, we go down the quantum AI, where perfection rules. But if we think about the nexus, which we described in our speech, and we think about the data centers becoming essentially a nexus, then that socio-info-technological nexus, that SIT nexus, as we call it, has to be both socio-ethical, but it's also, and this is perhaps the idea that I took away, that becomes the knowledge hubs of the future. And the knowledge cannot exist other than within the socio, because knowledge is socio, but so is the info-technological. So those hubs have a really important role to play in educating, in creating the universities, the labs, the experiments of the future, which I don't think the technologists yet appreciate.
And our focus today was actually to explain the significance of knowledge transfer. And we use an example there, which is the current project between Australia and France, with the development of the new Australian submarine force between two countries, two different cultures, two different language. And here we are, two people, that is Simon and I, from two different cultures with two different language. And we projected it on time and think, what might happen 20 years, 30 years, 50 years from now? Because it's one thing to sign a contract, which is what politicians do, civil servants do. But it's another to be able to develop a relationship that understand the nature of culture. So our point in that conversation was actually to try to explain the significance of understanding of each other's, understanding of each other's culture, language, ontology, so that we can move forward, and in the process of which we can understand what crisis could ever develop, not today, but in 30 or 40 years, and how are we equipped today to train, because that's what we do, we train people, we help people, we transfer knowledge. How can we help people to understand how to deal with crisis in 20, 30 or 40 years from now. It's very abstract, but only the abstract can resolve the problem of the future.
I'm going to disagree here with Jonathan. We educate people. The real enemy of today is this pursuit of perfection, of stability, of certainty. New knowledge doesn't exist in perfection or stability or uncertainty. So part of the quantum is creating opportunities for learning, which means creating opportunities for instability and uncertainty within an experiment. It goes back to Plato, if you like, in terms of his thinking.
Yeah. Indeed. And that's really important in the context of today's forum, which is a great forum because it looks at, trying to understand what's happening with data centers, try to understand what's happening with data, and most importantly, try to understand what is happening with the ethics behind data. I mean, it's one thing to talk about, so much data available, but what do we do with it? What are the ethics attached to it when we're going to use this data? What do we do with it? And I think that's really important because we need to explore this area so that we understand what actually we're doing with all this and where are we going to go with it. And at the moment, the technologists do not necessarily have the knowledge to take this further. I think it's important to have a conversation about it because data centers are very important. Data is important, critical, in fact. So that we can explore data, that we can explore what a data center is and what will there be in the future, that we can explore the ethics in the use of data is really important.
I have a sense that some of the language we're developing between us today is not going to be that unfamiliar tomorrow, but it's only going to be more familiar tomorrow because of opportunities such as DCD for us to begin this narrative, to start the experiment, to begin the change. Jonathan?
I concur with that.